Hey everyone, it's Carla Rieger. I'm here with Michael Oliver, and we're going to be talking about presentation skills today. Now, Michael Oliver, over the last 19 years, has been one of the top-tier generic trainers and coaches in the field of direct selling and network marketing. And he has this really amazing breakthrough process called the natural selling sales training. And I was actually in one of his workshops years and years ago, and I just thought, oh, now this is good. You know, like this is different from what's out there, and I really appreciate it, and I'm picky who I interview, so I really wanted everyone. We're happen to be in the same city at this point in time, so I'm so happy that Michael's here today. He uses this really interesting, holistic, kind of Socratic conversational approach that creates kind of an instantaneous attraction and trust with each and every person that you talk to, and that's so important in, you know, your individual business, because people sign up under you because they like, know, and trust you, and that's the biggest part. I think that's the biggest, steepest learning curve for people, either when they're doing the one-to-one presentations, but even more so when you're speaking to a group, because it starts to become, oh my God, I have to do that with a bunch of people all at the same time, right? So he's a certified trainer with the Shopper Center, and created and taught at the Shopper Center Natural Selling and the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And that's the other reason I really love Michael Oliver, is because there's sort of selling from the soul, you know, combining spirituality with the selling process. We often think of those two things as separate, but really it's just really about connecting with people, and so the spirit needs to be so part of it. So thank you so much, Michael, for being here today.
Thank you, Carla. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So let me ask my first question for you. What would you say has helped you? Because we were talking the other day, and of course, just like me, when you first start out, you're not a good presenter, right? You start out kind of making lots of mistakes, but you have to start somewhere. So what did you think for you personally, because I've seen Michael, he's an amazing presenter, go from awkward to flow with it? I'm sure there's many things, but what would you say stands out as one of the biggest things that made the difference?
I think maybe 2 things that come to mind. First one is just getting out there as much as I could with anyone that would have me, whether it's speaking in front of 2 people or 20 people or 50 people. And the other one is getting some training. But the training I got wasn't the training I expected. It was far more powerful than what I expected. I would say those were the 2 things, yeah.
So tell me the difference between what you expected and what you got.
Well, I was expecting more technique, you know, how to project one's voice and positioning on the stage and body and stuff like this. And I got some of that, which was good. But I learned something far more powerful, which came with some video recording. I think you and I spoke about this. Where I was being videotaped in front of small class. There was other people doing the same thing with a full-blown camera. I mean, as those days, those cameras were huge, you know, and there was a videographer there. And and I was instructed to learn a piece, to deliver it. And when I started, I was about 3 or 4 minutes into it. The instructor started yelling and screaming at me, which was rather hard, and asking where I was coming from, which I had no idea what he meant. So I was saying, well, what do you mean, you know? And he was saying, well, where are you coming from, you know, where are you? And mean, by that time I was totally flustered, and was very, very, very confused, and started tearing up quite a bit, so the box of tissues came out, you know, and that sort of stuff. Oh yeah, it was quite brutal. So he said, you know, come here. And so he said, watch yourself on the little monitor. So I was watching the monitor. He said, look at yourself. Look at your eyes; they're all over the place. And he said, you're using techniques. You know, you're using structure here. You're doing this. You're doing that. And I said, well, am I not supposed to do this? He said, no. He said, you're not showing up. And then I finally got it. What he meant is that he said, you know, sort of, where is Michael Oliver? Where is that authentic person, the person who you really are, not the stage person, the person that you think you have to be. And I kind of got it at that stage. And he said, do you have a favorite subject? And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, now go out there and start talking about your favorite subject. And so I did that. Sort of feel it now, it's kind of amazing how that sort of comes back. And so I started talking about my favorite subject, and for about 5 minutes, and at that time my favorite subject anyway. And he said, now come back and look. And so I saw it was on there, and I could see this sort of a totally different person. And it was me. And he said, that's all you have to do. He said, you don't have to know a lot of stuff. He said, you're just going to come across as you, talking about what you know. And that's all there is. And that's what people want to see. That's what people want to hear. You don't need structure. And I was doing a bit of training for them as well. They said, you teach us not to use techniques, so don't use techniques. That was the biggest lesson. And from that kind of gave me the freedom to move forward. There was actually another time that came up as well that totally released me and enabled me to move about quite freely in training. I'm more of a trainer than a speaker, but yeah.
Still, similar. That's so interesting. Yeah, I've had something similar to that. And it's really useful to go on video if you haven't done this and watch yourself, like when you're being all technique-y and then when you're actually speaking authentically. You'll really see, and then you'll remember what was going on inside when you were being authentic. Yeah, and that'll help hook it in, I think, right? Yeah.
I remember one time in England, doing a series of workshops around the country for a company, and the person who was managing that particular area, he wasn't familiar with my work, and he came up, and it was really good of him to do that. And he asked me, he said, I said, I'm not familiar with your work. Would you prefer if one of the other leaders presented? And I thought about it, and I thought something came in my mind. I like to experiment with things. I'm not afraid of doing that even on the stage. And I said, no, I think there is somebody I have in mind that I'd like to introduce me. So he said, okay, well, whatever you want. And so I waited till about 5 minutes before the start. It was starting at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was a young lady I'd met at another place, and she came along. And she was already aware of what I was doing beforehand, my work beforehand. And so I beckoned her over from her seat, and she came over, and I said, I asked her a couple of questions. I said, you really like what I do, right? She said, yeah. I said, so why do you like it? And so she explained to me very briefly. And I said, that's great. I said, so would you kind of promote what I'm doing a little bit? She said, yeah. I said, fantastic, because in 2 minutes someone has to present me up on the stage, and I've decided that I'd like you to do it. And she just went into total meltdown. It's like, wow, I can't do this. I've never done this before. And so I took up a few things I learned. I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, you're coming from a place of fear, right? And she said, yeah. I said, so let's look at that. I said, when you're in the audience and a speaker comes on the stage, are you kind of hoping that they fail or that they succeed? And she said, I'm hoping that they succeed. I said, and do you think everyone else is feeling that way? And she said, yeah, I would think they are. I said, that's what they're looking for. I said, so that's all you have to do is just walk on the stage and just introduce me, tell me that a little bit of experience, maybe that what you have. You don't even have to do that if you don't want to. I said, and then just turn around and just invite me onto the stage. That's all you have to do. I said, and you'll find everyone is on your side. And there'll be even more on your side after you've done it. So she looked at me and said, okay. And she did probably one of the best introductions I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
And it changed her life as well.
I bet it did.
Yeah, it was quite a kind of a change for her. So that was kind of an interesting experience. It span off from a lot of the stuff that I learned.
I remember when you told me that before, and I was thinking, that's so good. Like, nobody ever sits in the audience going, boy, I hope they're really hard to listen to.
Yeah.
They don't, right?
Well,
they're rooting for you.
As you know, I mean, it's invariably you will lose a small percentage of the audience, 5 to 10% of the audience who either aren't listening or aren't tuned in or are there because they want to be belligerent or something like that.
Yeah.
But it never starts off that way. And as I was taught and as I've always learned, though I have experimented playing with it to see if I could sort of turn things around, is you have to ignore that part of the audience
Yeah.
and move on very, very quickly, because it's the other 95% who are there eager to learn and to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, it's like that glass is half full, glass is half empty. Focus on the people who are like really interested, because there's probably about 5% that are totally interested, and you just focus on them. And what most people do is the opposite, right? They focus on the people who are like on their on their cell phone and not listening.
Well, it's like life, really. I mean, 90% of our lives are really so good, and 10%, aren't so good, and yet we tend as human beings to concentrate on that 10%. Why is it we kind of defame ourselves and ridicule ourselves on that 10% when the other 90% is so wonderful?
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We sort of structure ourselves that way. You talk about cell phones. I mean, I have had incidences where people have used cell phones, and I call them. These are training types that. I was in Malaysia once, and a few people were cell phoning. It was a beautiful amphitheater with stairs sort of stepped up, not stairs, seats stepped up, and a few people were. And I finally thought, no, this is crazy. So I stopped. I said, okay, I'm going to stop here for a moment, because what I'm doing is I'm observing a few of you are on your cell phones, and I said, and I know from from experience, and also it's absolutely true, is that no human being can do two things at the same time. You have to switch off from one thing to do the other. I said, so if your cell phones are more important than what I have to teach you, then I invite you to leave. It's okay, I'm fine on it. And if you've been forced to come here by your boss or bosses or anything else like that, that's okay if you want to leave as well. But from now on, you have a choice. You either turn off the cell phones or you leave. And I said, and either way, I'm happy with it. So I'm going to wait here for you to do that. And no one left.
Wow.
And
Remember that.
And no more cell phones. And so I'll call it. I'll as is it all the time. Especially in a training, I'll just always as is it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's
enough
really
about
good.
you. What about me? What about you?
Yeah, what else do we want? Well, what do you wish you'd known at the beginning? Starting to let's talk about one-to-one presentations where you're, introducing your either some product or service or business opportunity to someone. What do you wish you'd known earlier on that would make the difference?
Well, I learned this pretty early in so far as engaging the audience. So I took another course. It was a 5-day course, which was quite intensive. And that is, you have to engage the audience right from the beginning, and one of the best ways to do it is to ask one or two questions,
right.
Which has their attention,
right.
and it has to be an overall question that will have them sitting up. So it can't be specific just to certain parts of the audience. It's
right.
got to be encompassing to
like an open question that really makes them think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
what's an example of a question you'd like to ask?
Well, an example would be, for example, with natural selling is that, and sometimes I shoot right off from the beginning, after I've been introduced, is to say, so how many of you here would love to be able to eliminate the fear of talking with people when you want to talk about your business? And everybody's hand goes up.
Right.
And at that moment, you've got that. And then introduce another question, just to round it out, or maybe 3 questions. So that would depend on the audience, but that would be a favor because they're there to learn how to connect with people, how to talk with people, how to help people buy their products and their services in network marketing and direct sales. And that is the biggest problem, is the fear that comes from connecting and talking with people.
And I think also that helps them get there into the topic. Yes, that is an issue for me, and owning it and seeing that I've committed to be here to find a solution. And so it would be that process
it's
as well.
all embracing, and from that moment, as long as you can continue with the, or I can continue with the flow. It's there, reference to it is constant, but it doesn't have to be revealed right away, because a lot of times there's background that has to be created in order to create understanding.
Yeah.
But that would be a key question that I would ask.
Right. And then, of course, when you're doing one-to-one, which I'm sure you would do, is ask questions, and that's always that key thing. You ask questions first before you start diving into your content. just so that you can match your content to what's interesting to them.
Right.
Yeah. So, what would you say is the top tip you have for giving those one-to-one, like starting off with a one-to-one presentation where you want to, although it's a conversation, in some ways I like to say it's also a presentation, because if you just sort of wander all over the place, it's not going to be as effective as if you're listening to what they say and then putting in something that's been really well thought through. That's what I find personally. And that's not true for everyone, but what do you think helps make a difference for the one-to-ones?
Well, it goes back to that first question, or something that you say that has the audience on your side. I'm not good at telling jokes, but some people are, and it is relevant to what they have to say. I think that's really good. I know, for example, many years ago, this actually happened, is that there was a conference in London, I think, for airlines. I think it was for airlines. This is just coming to me, so I'm having to formulate this. And the speaker was 14 minutes late coming on the stage. He was introduced and he was 14 minutes late. People got impatient. And it took a lot of guts to do this. And he walked onto the stage and he said something to the effect of, sort of, I guess pretty much, that's how he said it, I guess pretty much many of you are pretty impatient with me at this stage because I'm 14 minutes late. But I don't know if you realize this, but the average industry lateness is 14 minutes. And that's how it feels for a lot of passengers. So let's start addressing that, shall we? And he had their attention right away.
Right.
I mean, I didn't say the words eloquently enough, because I just grasped.
And then probably people were thinking, oh, he did it on purpose to teach us something. Right?
Yeah.
I remember once actually I fell on stage. I was getting up to, this is like a speaker's worst nightmare, right? Where you walk on stage and you're like, oh, sort of feeling confident. I literally tripped and fell like onto the stage with like 600 people watching. But my topic at the time was, team building and using fun at work. So I just sort of stood up and bowed and pretended like I meant to do it, and got away with it. So that's always good to do with your mistakes. So what would you think, what about those small gatherings you have in your home? Say you have over, 6 people to your home, and what do you think helps make those presentations go well?
Again, it's establishing the core reason why they're there, which is usually pretty easy to find out, and to start off by asking a couple of questions and asking specific people for their experiences.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about, and engaging them in conversation about their experiences. I mean, I use natural selling to do that.
Yeah.
And inviting other people to comment and to contribute as well.
Yeah.
And being able to facilitate, if you like, the group.
Yeah.
And doing it from a point of view which is totally non-manipulative, but it's something that sort of helps. And what people will tell is quite sort of deeply about their experiences.
Yeah, the personal why story is something I often talk about. Yeah.
And that will resonate with people.
Yeah.
And what I find is that I don't have to talk about myself. I'm not someone who does talk about myself anyway. I very rarely introduce myself or talk about what I've done or what I'm doing. What I attempt to do is to let what I'm teaching or what I'm training speak for itself.
Right.
And that who I am comes out that way, and it's not really important as to the accolades or anything else that I've had, unless I need to sort of link it to something to verify my credentials on something or other.
Although the story you told about being on camera, I think a story like that's so interesting because it helps us understand that you didn't start out always good at this, but at a moment when you learned something about the topic at hand.
Yeah, I mean, I just knew I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of ironic. I knew I had to do it because it was part of doing what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done a little bit of training before and not speaking. I mean, for example, when I'm asked to speak at a funeral or wedding, I just absolutely refuse. I mean, I'm just You know, I'm just not. I feel very uncomfortable about doing that, which is strange. But when we start talking about something that I know about, and I'm in that mode, I'm totally at home there. But when I first started out, like I said, I would just find anyone that would take me, so I could practice. And there's sometimes when I first started out, I'd have a podium, and I got to learning how to talk, how to present by scanning script. I could almost read it word for word and make it seem as though it's conversational.
Yeah, that's a really great skill.
And I hid behind that podium for about 2 years until someone released me from it. Like something happened, and I got released from that podium, and I never used a podium again.
Yeah, I don't use a podium either.
Yeah.
There's something also about that connection without furniture in the way that helps build rapport, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah. So let's just talk about contrast. I always like the contrast. Like I find when, if you go to a meeting, like a monthly meeting or a gathering, instead of doing what you suggested, what do you find people tend to do that's a mistake?
What do you mean?
Like
what kind of meeting?
Like say, let's do the home gathering. So I've been to a few where, they don't ask you any questions, and they just start a bunch of reasons why you should be interested in this. Why does that not work?
Well, it's basically kind of the conventional selling mode, which is based on the features of what you think someone should be listening to, or they should know, and trying to present them as benefits. And you can't present benefits because benefits are very personal. There's 3 things: there's features, advantages, and benefits. And so the feature of something is this is what it is, a book or whatever it is. The advantage is what it will do for you in basically a somewhat personal but quite a logical sense. In other words, this book will help you understand how to present, for example. So it's an advantage. So the book has an advantage in as far as, or maybe you could extend that. This book will help you to really understand how to present better than any other book.
Right.
Okay. So that's an advantage. You don't have to explain it. But the benefit is about what it will do for you, right?
Yeah.
And so the benefit is, for you, would be different from me, and it's different for everyone. And so you cannot talk about benefits. You can only talk about advantages. But advantages tend to be logical. They tend to be sort of more kind of non-specific.
Right.
Such as, this is a book. Great. Okay. And so, and that's the biggest disadvantage in doing presentations, especially in smaller groups, is when you do the presentation. And presentations do have their place. When you're doing something like that, you're doing it in a generic way.
Yeah,
and
you're having to guess what the benefits are.
and again, if you get down to asking irrelevant questions to gauge the audience, which you can do beforehand, in effect. You could say, I've spoken to a few of you, and what I found is, as a common denominator, is this fact that da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, how many of you would like to turn that around? That would be one way of doing it.
Right.
And you're going to get a number of hands, and then you can engage the audience more. So for some of you that might not be relevant. What else in that context would you like to hear or see?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you.
That's so important.
And then you can mold it, because if you know your stuff, you can mold your presentation
to their needs. Yeah.
But again, that requires you to sort of let go of your need to have a structured presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. Like no sections so that you can go in and really talk about it, but switch gears. Yeah, that's really huge. Feature, advantage, and benefit, and most people mess that up, right?
Yeah. Well, out of that conversation is that when you have that kind of communication, is that the benefits will come out, because benefits, as I said, is what it will do for you personally, make you feel better.
Help you stay home with the kids.
help you grow. Well, even staying home with the kids is, in essence, be careful about that, because that's an advantage.
Right.
Okay, you start looking at advantage, because the question that comes up, so what would that do for you by being able to stay at home with the kids? and the answers will mostly be different for most people.
Right.
And you can dig a little bit deeper, but that starts becoming a benefit.
Right. So now we're getting down to real personal needs for how you live your life. That's so important. That's such a huge distinction to make. Yeah, because you might think other people are thinking like you and they're not. And then you're going into all these advantages, and then there's this sort of blank look and they're not getting it, and they go, no, I don't think so. And you're like, what? Why?
Here's something I teach, which is so fundamentally important in order to sort of eliminate any fear, whether it's in selling, presenting, is that people do not think what you think they think. I 100% guarantee they do not think what you think they think, and in fact your thinking that they do gets in your way.
Yeah.
And if you can remove that whole aspect, it's like this lady, that young lady I asked to do the presentation. She thought about presenting about what was going to happen to her, and she very quickly learned that that the opposite was true, and because she trusted me, and then she went on the stage and then demonstrated to herself that the opposite was true. And so not only did she get a learning from that, but she took it in the cellular level,
right,
and was able then to move forward from that. So a very, very rapid belief change came up in the space of, say, 10 minutes.
That's so interesting. And let's talk about, like, which often is a benefit, like being able to stay home with the kids, not having to go off to a job if you're, say, you're going to do a network marketing company. So what might be 3 totally different benefits for that same advantage that you've experienced? I mean, I have a few in my head, but...
One of them is kind of higher self-esteem, lack of guilt by not being able to be there during their informative years. In other words, getting rid of the guilt on that. Joy, happiness, those are benefits, and they tend a lot of times to be feelings.
Yeah, they're feelings. They're deep core human needs.
Yeah. And there are a lot of them too. And you can ask them, you can ask people those kinds of questions. So how would you feel about being able to stay at home with the kids? And they'll tell you, they use words. And as they're using the words and talking about them, and they're expressing and feeling what it's like to be in that place.
So that's a very good question. How would it feel for you if you had this advantage?
Yeah, you could ask that on the stage, if you're in a big crowd. So how would you feel if you could talk with anyone, anywhere, anytime, without any tension, without any anxiety? Raise your hands, and they're all there for one reason. They're going to raise their hands. So again, that's participation. Asking questions really involves people.
Cool, that's great. So I just kind of have one more question for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to recommend to people who are certainly wanting to break through to the next level in their network marketing or direct selling business in terms of presentations?
You talk about standing up in front of the stage?
Yeah, let's talk about it that way.
Okay, well, here's
or even for 5 people in your living room.
Here's my experience. There are times when you can only partially include the people you're talking with, right, as you're doing a presentation for a company. And there are a few things which I find are danger signals, and they will actually backfire on you. And one of them is, for example, don't talk about your company being the best. And don't talk about having the best compensation plan, or the best it or best that. Because as soon as you do, what you're doing is you're making a comparison. And comparison creates conflict. Okay? Inclusion does not. And so avoid saying those kinds of things. Say that we have a good compensation plan, or we have excellent products that are proven in the marketplace, or proven through whatever, to be able to create really rapid and great results for people. That's very different than coming up with an indirect comparison. Because I've seen people lose potential partners and customers who are in the audience because they didn't know that there was another product, that they didn't know that there was another company that they could do this with. They had no kind of conception of network marketing, for example, so they didn't have any idea that there was anything else, and they thought this was a brilliant idea. Just having your own business, working for yourself, making a commission, building people below you, and being able to sort of move forward in their lives, right? And I've actually had a couple of people there, and I sat in the audience with them, and one of them has actually turned to me and said, "So there are other companies like this?" And I'm going, that person who just presented that idea that we are the best company, she inadvertently revealed that there are other companies. And the whole point is that we don't have the best. I have a company, it's great, it's called Natural Selling, love it. It has helped tens of thousands of people. Would I say it was the best? No. I can't say it's the best. To me, yes, it's the best. Well, for somebody else, maybe something is better for them.
Right.
All right? And for me to say that it is the best without finding out where they are right now, what it is they're looking for, whether what they're doing is working for them or not, it would be wrong for me to say it's the best.
Yeah.
But I can tell myself.
Right.
And I can say it to you.
Right. And I would believe him. So tell us how people can get more about what you offer. By the way, Michael's got this really great book called How to Sell Network Marketing. I love the subtitle, Without Fear, Anxiety, or Losing Your Friends. And you also have a link you can tell people about.
Yeah, sure. I have a website, naturalselling.com. That's dead easy, naturalselling.com. It's a fairly easy website to work your way through. There are a few products on it, and I like dealing mostly with one-to-one. My favorite at the moment is working through Zoom with groups of 4 people, and we go through a process, 8 different sessions with follow-ups. And I like that aspect of them because I can work with them individually as well as in a group, which is what we do, and people learn off each other. But there's a lot of different ways that if this is something that is of interest to you, then and this book, of course, which is the second thing I did. I did an audio series, not an audio series, but audio tapes at the time many years ago, called How to Have Effective Conversations. So 12 ways to start effective conversations. And then I wrote the book. Plus I have some other products as well.
And you can find all that at naturalselling.com.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Michael.
It's my pleasure.
I loved talking with you today, and I'm sure it's helpful for those listening. So until next time.
Okay, thank you.
Bye for now, everyone.